Well, hi there, and a very warm welcome to Jump to It here on irishracing.com. Now we've got a bit of a special show for you here, focusing on the mares, specifically the mares races at the Cheltenham Festival. Of course, we had the entries come out this week for the Mares Novices and the Mares Chase, and of course, we've already got the Mares Hurdle entries already in our catalogue. But it's just something which has always been a little bit of a controversial topic, I think it's fair to say. To discuss this, I'd like to bring in the team of Stephen Harris and Vincent Finegan. Hello, gents. Interested in this one because we hear about a lot of different viewpoints on the mares from breeding perspective. Of course, they absolutely love it. It's expanded the program. You get to showcase some of the top mares on the top level, and they've got their own platform to shine. I think it'd be fair to say. Critics say bringing all these mares races through to the Cheltenham Festival, diluting perhaps from other contests and weakening the structure of not perhaps just the Cheltenham Festival, but the racing program throughout the season as a whole. Lots of different angles in here, Stephen. I mean, do you have a kind of an overriding viewpoint on this?
Yeah, I can understand why it's happened because there was a real sort of dearth, wasn't there, going back 10 or 15 years? They just weren't being kept in training. There were not many opportunities for them. They didn't tend to compete, generally speaking, with their rivals on the terms that they came into. But I do suspect that it's gone too far the other way now. First of all, from a punting point of view, these aren't betting races until the day, and I'm not even sure they're that big a betting race on the day because nobody knows what's going to run. They're all multiply entered up. They're dominated by a couple of yards in truth, and they don't capture the public imagination. So, given that racing is a betting sport which needs betting to survive, perhaps it's not a wonderful idea. Because I'm sort of just about old enough, hard that is to believe, Ed, I know, to remember Dawn Run and mares who used to run in the top races against horses and win. Whereas now you can argue that they're not running in Gold Cups, they're not running in champion chases, they're just running against each other for races that nobody can really ever remember who they won, and are they really that prestigious? I mean, I think there's probably a better case. Again, it's probably an age thing, but I would sooner have a 3-day Cheltenham Festival, not have these races, but have them on a Saturday at Punchestown or at Ascot, or they don't really need to be part of the Cheltenham Festival. You're just taking away horses that should be running in other races.
Interesting points there, Stephen. Yeah, we'll come on to the Cheltenham Festival as a whole in a minute, but specifically in regards to the Mares programme, Vincent, I mean, what's your view on it? Do you think it works as it is? As Stephen alludes to, perhaps it's starting to go too far the other way now. Have we almost overcompensated for the Mares programme? And I remember I was looking back at some quotes from about a decade ago, and there was a lot of kind of aggro at the time with, of course, the super mare Quigley, who won 6 Mares Hurdles. A lot of people say, someone actually said, I'd rather she'd be beaten in 6 champion hurdles. I thought at the time, rather of a cynical point of view, but I kind of get it now to the point of when you've got such a good individual, you almost want to see them tested against the very best. I mean, which kind of side of the fence are you sitting on?
Kind of on both sides of this, to be honest with you, because on the one side, there was a case for saying that if you were a breeder and you're breeding horses for national hunt particularly, and you get a colt foal and it's gelded and it goes off to the sales and is sold for big money, and the fillies were being left at home. There was nowhere for them to really go within the racing program. So they've changed that over the last 15, 20 years, and it has made a big difference. There's no doubt about it. Like you take, for argument's sake, Honeysuckle. Look at her coming through. We've had Epatante as well. There's 2 champion hurdle winners, something about them not going for the top races. We've 2 champion hurdle winners in recent times as well. You had the likes of Annie Power, you had Quigley. There's lots of others as well around there. And of course, as Stephen mentioned, Dawn Run was an exception in her own time. When there were no mares around in real terms at the top level, and she won champion hurdle and a Gold Cup. But I think this is a good idea. It's a good thing for smaller owners as well. If you're someone who would like to have a runner at Cheltenham, like to be involved in it, there's no chance of you buying something like a John Bon or one of those ones for $500,000. You're looking at something much cheaper. You look at Honeysuckle. She was bought for $9,500 as a store. So like that's small money. You going back a few years ago, that Lady Rebecca I was just looking up, which had won 7 times at Cheltenham, not necessarily at the festival, but won 3 Cleve hurdles. That was bought for 800 guineas. And won 11 of our 19 races. So it's like there's real value for a small time punter come owner to say, or a few lads in the pub want to get involved in the syndicate, it's a Mares is the one they're going to get involved in first. So it's a good entry point for everybody. Whether we need 3 solid exclusive Mares races at the festival, I'm not sure. You look at the entries for this Mares Chase, which is only in its 2nd year, there's only 15 entries. Now, maybe that's a case because they've only started to do it. Maybe in another 5 years, there'll be 50 entries for this because more and more people will get involved knowing that there's a race for their mare at Cheltenham, a Chase. Having said that, this race last year, Colreevy beat Ellie May. That was one of the races at the festival. It was an absolute cracker. Half a length between the two of them, driving to the line. It was a terrific spectacle. And this year we'll probably see something similar. We've got the likes of, we just saw the entries this week. Ellie May is in again, and Mount Ida. There was nothing between the pair of them when they ran in Fairyhouse recently. So it could end up being a cracking race again, perhaps with a small field. And the other side of this is that from a UK point of view, there's very few mares in the UK, isn't there? That seems to be it, because I suppose you don't breed a whole lot of national hunt horses anyway. So most of them are in Ireland. The fact that the big owners aren't really looking for mares generally, so you end up, it's a smaller level, so that those mares tend to be staying in Ireland. And I think Ireland is going to dominate the 2 races that we've entries for that we're going to discuss now in a few minutes' time.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose there's the viewpoint as well. If you are good enough to be in the Stayers Hurdle or the Champion Chase or the Champion Hurdle, then you will end up there, won't you? Like Honeysuckle or Put the Kettle On, etc. I suppose, there's lots of different strands to this argument. Just very briefly, Stephen, come to you. For the argument of, say we did away with the Mares programme at the Cheltenham Festival specifically, and forced the mares to meet the boys, if you like, for want of a better phrase. The mares allowance, £7. You with it, against it, or do you think it should be reduced? I mean, because I've seen a lot of people say, look, Honeysuckle's brilliant, but shouldn't, at the very top level, we all be running off a kind of level playing field?
Minefield, isn't it? I mean, I do think it's right. If you're going to encourage them to run against horses, then they should be receiving the £7. Maybe that should not be the case in Grade 1 races. I've read somebody saying it's fine for novices and Grade 2, grade listed, whatever. But right at the very pinnacle, you're going to get freaks like Honeysuckle, like Dawn Run, like Lady Rebecca. Perhaps they don't need that allowance, but then you're into another. It makes it even more complicated, doesn't it? So it is a very difficult issue. What tends to happen in the UK is we've got mares like Zambella, the Glancing Queen. They're the 2 I can think of at the moment over fences. They've been running 3 or 4 times in 3 or 4 runner races once a month for the last 4 or 5 months. And they're just starting 9 to 4 on. They're winning until they meet each other. And then they finish 1st and 2nd. So I'm not sure it's working, is it? It's certainly not working for punters. I mean, it might be wonderful if you own one of these lovely mares and they're running for 12 grand and there's 2 runners. I'm not sure it's working for punters or the public. But it is difficult. I haven't got a massively strong opinion. I just think there's too much racing as a general rule of thumb, and I'm not sure you need the extra another Mares Hurdle chucked in. It seems like a permanent fixture now at the festival. I'm not sure that it adds a great deal. They could all be running in other races quite happily.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned a key phrase there, Stephen, more racing. There's been a lot of noise in recent times, hasn't there? You're going off on a slight tangent, but it's all related about the Cheltenham Festival expanding another day. In the current format, we have 4 days, 28 races, 7 races a day. Talk of go to 5th day. Who knows where after that we may end up. Vincent, to come to you. I mean, look, from a commercial perspective, I suppose there's every need to go to 5 days when you look at the Jockey Club revenues, it has to be said. But is there a danger you are diluting the quality of the Cheltenham Festival to the point it's going to become just another meeting?
Well, the way that they expanded it to the 4 days, I think, yes, there is. That's the problem, is what they did. That you look at it here, this Mares Chase is really a girls' Ryanair, is what it is. And like, if they're going to expand it to a 5th day, what are we going to have? A female champion hurdle and a female gold cup and all this type of thing. I think they need to get away from that. Concentrate on what we have as the pure classic championship races. And then you can make it a 20-day festival for all that matters. It doesn't matter. You just put one of them on with 6 handicaps and away we go. And it's similar to what we have in Ireland with Galway. Galway has 2 big races essentially during the week. It is a Galway Plate and a Galway Hurdle, but they make 7 days around those 2 races. And it works fantastic. You get a huge crowd going. Everyone's enthusiastic, has a great time. It's a brilliant week, and you can pick the day you want to go, 1 or 2 days in the week or whatever. And it works really, really well. Cheltenham could do the same. Like, like you'll take Gold Cup Day. Gold Cup Day is already sold out. So someone wants to go and see a Gold Cup, they can't, is the bottom line at this moment in time. So if there was an extra day, 2 days, 3 days, what difference does it make it going on for 3 weeks, 2 months? It doesn't matter how long it goes on, as long as you don't dilute the quality in the championship races. So I think there's no reason why you couldn't do. Look at the Dublin Racing Festival a couple of weeks ago. Okay, it's 2 days, but in amongst those top races that they had, and they've literally brought them right in where you're doing real cream of the crop races, but they supplemented with a load of handicaps, and there's no reason why Cheltenham couldn't do the same and have a load of different handicaps or hunter chases or cross-country races. You could have all sorts of different things in there, but you keep the championship stuff as being pure. You don't dilute that anymore by spreading them out like your Ryanair and your Mares Chase, or even your Ryanair in particular. Why is that even there? There should be just 2 choices perhaps for those top chasers and everything else. So that's what I would see. I don't see any reason why it can't go 5 days, but it's how you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the how you do it is the key point. Just to play devil's advocate, and I'll come to you very soon, Stephen. Talk of going to 5 days. If you made the first 4 days, if you made every day 6 races, then really you're only adding on 2 more to make it a 5th day, where you could probably bring back the novice handicap, the 0 to 145, and throw in a veterans chase. So I could totally see, from the purse strings point of view, there's actually very little change that needs to be done in order for a massive revenue benefit. It's interesting. But I suppose the thing with all things is Cheltenham's build is the Olympics. It starts to become a commercial free-for-all and a day out. Is it taking away the gloss of what it used to be? Of course, only 17 years ago, it was a 3-day festival. And you hear a lot of people saying, from a racing perspective, they enjoyed it a lot more back then. I mean, it's a tricky balance here, because at the same time, you can't be stuck in the dinosaur ages and say, oh, well, it was how it was in the 80s, if the kind of money is looking you in the face, isn't it? So, I mean, what would be your take on it in terms of expanding the 5 days? I mean, you tend dead against it, or is it you take a more Vincent's kind of view, it's how it is expanded, which will be key to whether it works or not?
Well, I mean, I can see both sides. A bit painful to sit on the fence, but I mean, first of all, if we had a 3-week festival, Ed, you'd be on TV more than Eamon Holmes, wouldn't you? I mean, I'd be buying shares in Ed Quigley. I mean, you can't. I wake up about 5 in the morning. I put my sort of Sky Sports racing on. Your face is on the big screen. So, it's unbelievable.
I wouldn't wish it on my worst nightmare, Stephen. Yeah, worst nightmare.
Ed Quigley's TV minutes would be a very good spread marker, wouldn't it? No, but I mean, I could see the argument for 5 days with 6 races. That is correct. There's hard to argue that. And then you probably have to have the Gold Cup on Saturday, when it'd be a massive betting event. Maybe at 5 o'clock, 5:30, like they do the Grand National. That's the route we're inevitably going around. I don't think we need any more races. We could definitely introduce that handicap. There used to be a cracking betting race that they've got rid of for one of the Mares Hurdles we're going to talk about in a few minutes' time. I don't think anyone would mind that. As a wider point, I am very much against more racing. We're getting ourselves into a real mess with far too much racing. The calendar and the fixtures this season, the standard of racing Monday to Thursday, I've moaned about it before. I'll be moaning about it for another 10 years, I dare say. But the standard midweek is appalling. I mean, in England, it's absolutely double. The betting interest is, I speak to people in a couple of trading rooms with the big bookmakers, it's fallen off a cliff. And the exchange turnover's disappeared as well, partly because of affordability, but partly because people are losing interest. And I would fear that if we go down Vincent's sort of tongue-in-cheek suggestion like Galway, which goes on for about 3 months. I mean, personally, I find Glorious Goodwood in the summer. We've had this discussion before.
Yeah.
Glorious Goodwood is about 5 days. It's basically there's 6 decent races. They've got Folkestone Sellers on at 3:30 in the afternoon, 2 or 3 times a week. It's absolute rubbish. I mean, it's like bright, and nobody's interested in it. There's no betting on it. It gets diluted, and you could find, if you start going sort of 5-6 days Cheltenham, you're just going to get a lot of handicaps. It loses its prestige, and eventually it filters through that there isn't the interest. I mean, at the moment, Vincent is absolutely right about Ireland are really dominating the Cheltenham Festival, and it's a good thing. It's brought vibrancy. It's increased the standard. I mean, it's increased the standard so much that England haven't got a flipping chance. That's the actual truth. But it's a good thing. It's raised standards. The quality of horse, how much they're paying to buy these novices, has all gone through the roof, and it's all Cheltenham related. But I don't know. I think you are at danger point now. We're getting to that point where you could dilute it so it loses some of that prestige. I mean, just quickly, sorry, this is
No,
going
no,
to be a
carry on,
half-hour
carry on.
program, but we had the Betfair Hurdle at Newbury, didn't we, last weekend?
Yeah.
Won by a 20 chance. It's the most valuable handicap hurdle in the calendar. It's worth 3 times more than the county hurdle. 15 entries they had for it. 15. I mean, it was a blinding race on the day, but you know, at the moment there's about 412 entered in the county hurdle. They're racing for 300 quid. I mean, it's, you know, you're going to reach a point where it becomes imbalancing, and I think we're probably getting quite close to that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'll set me off again on my my rant. I've been saying for 5 years that prize money is overrated at the top end. All owners want, well, 90% of them, is a winner at the Cheltenham Festival. Hence why there'll be 200 entries for the county hurdle and the Betfair hurdle, which is a brilliant race with cracking prize money. As you say, only declared the 15 or 16 runners or whatever. Anyway, that's another rant for another day on a snowy day in February or something. So, yeah, interesting. We will move on to these aforementioned mares races because this is how the show started off. We had the entries for them this week, I should say. Of course, we've got the Mares Novices Hurdle. Now, I know this is not a race I think you're massively a fan of, is it, Stephen? But nonetheless, it's attracted some very interesting entries and kind of dovetailing with what you said earlier, a very strong hand from the Irish contingent, as you would expect.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems from a punting point of view is I'm just looking through the runners. Willie Mullins, 3-1, 4-1, 6-1, and then Willie Mullins again 8-1. You eventually get down to Harry Frysour's Love Envoy, who actually runs at Sandown on Thursday in the week just gone, after we've recorded this. But it's not that competitive. I mean, it's not a race for punters. It's never going to be it's going to be a race you're going to open the paper and look at for the first time on the day, isn't it? Nobody's had an Antepost wager. I mean, Ed, you are the master of finding winners at Cheltenham in August when you're on your sunbed in Barbados looking ahead at these races. But I bet even you have not had a bet in this Parnell's, whatever it's called.
No, you are spot on, actually. It's one of the few I have not had a bet in yet.
So it's a bit sort of an elite club, isn't it? Where the top Irish yards are going to have the first 6 in the betting. I'm not sure it adds
I suppose does it really matter though, Stephen, in terms of on the day? We've got 70,000 people there at Cheltenham. They've all had a couple of diet lemonades. The turnover to itself as being part of the Cheltenham Festival, I suppose, will naturally bring itself up to a certain level for the fact it's a Cheltenham race. Again, I suppose it's a separate argument for traders, anti-post engagement and the profile of Cheltenham overall. Is it detrimental to, I suppose?
I'm just looking at it from a punter. I can understand, you know, if you're a racing person and you're a breeder and all the rest of it, that these are a good idea. I just think that racing is funded by punters, and we start having too many of these sort of races that have no interest to the wider betting public. It's a bit of a slippery slope. But that being said, and Vincent will probably find the winner in a minute, and he knows far more about the Irish Mares Novice Hurdle form than I do, but it's still going to be a high quality race on the day, and we probably might see a future star emerge. So I'm trying not to be too doomster and gloomster, Ed.
Well, no, that's fair enough. I mean, it's not for you. It's not for you. But on that real lively note, can I pin you to one you've got in your short list? Is there anything, if it does line up on the day, put it that way?
I mean, the horse and again, I'm not au fait with the Irish mares, and I suspect there'll be a stone better. But Nurse Susan, who did get beat at Lingfield the other day, she's held in the absolute highest regard by Dan Skelton. And if she turned up here, I mean, she's 20-1 at the minute. That's a very fair price. She's one of those horses, we talked about this before. She lost her unbeaten record at Lingfield the other day. As soon as these horses get beat, they get written off. I mean, if she came into it like with 2 1s next to her name, she'd be a 6 or 7-1 chance. She's looked really impressive, and the form's worked out superbly. But she bumped into one Love Envoy at Lingfield the other day and got beat.
Ground, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was probably an inadequate trip. I think she needs further, but she's a really nice horse. I should think she might be the best of the English runners, but that might only mean she comes 7th if she turns up.
Wow. Vincent, we mentioned Willie Mullins is a very strong-handed here. Might have the first 6 home. Do you have a strong view on this race? Do you like this race? And secondly, as I say, for jump to it viewers, is there a mare in what looks a bit of a minefield to myself, which you think should be top of the tree, shall we say?
Well, the first thing to say is there's been 6 runnings of this race. The first 5 were won by Willie Mullins. He won it with Limini, Let's Dance, Lorena, Eglatine de Soy, which beat Concertista. And then Concertista went and won it the following year as a second season novice. And then last year, we'd Tell Me Something Girl from the Bromhead stable won it. First 4 home last year were all Irish. I'd imagine it'll be something similar this year. We've got very strong entries, and most of the ones. There's one race in particular to look at. There was a really good Mares Novices Hurdle in Fairyhouse recently. It was won by Allegory de Vassy of Willie Mullins's, and it beat a stable companion called Brandy Love. A lot of people here would expect Brandy Love to reverse that form when they get to Cheltenham. Brandy Love, on a right-handed track at Fairyhouse, jumped left throughout and badly left at times, and was only beaten 3 lengths in the end. Made a couple of mistakes. It was jumping that far left. Going left-handed in Cheltenham, I'd expect Brandy Love will definitely reverse that form, and it looks a bet. It's hard to believe Brandy Love isn't currently favourite. I think it's second favourite in most lists at this stage. So, for me, that's a bet. If you have to have a bet in this race at this stage, but obviously you'd prefer to wait till we see the actual runners nearer the time. It looks like it'll be a competitive field, and most of them will be trained by Willie Mullins. He should have half a dozen or more in this, and they'll all have chances. You can't rule out a Willie Mullins runner, because obviously he's got such a high level of horses within the yard that oftentimes that's what the jockeys say. It's the same with riding one for Aidan O'Brien in a classic or something. You're just saying, look, just get on a Willie Mullins horse. You've always got a chance, because they're bred to be the very best. And in this, I wouldn't put someone off on the day back in one of his at 28 to 1 or 33 to 1 or whatever. I know that the year Eglantine de Soy beat Concertista, I remember standing in Cheltenham, seeing that race. There was only a short head between them, whatever. I had never heard of either horse before. They just, where did they come from? And that's the sort of race this is. You'll just get something popping up here you've never heard of before and run a big race. So it wouldn't put anyone off anything. And a lot of these have only had 1 or 2 runs as well. So very unexposed horses. But it's an interesting one. I don't mind this being part of the festival. I like these sort of races in the sense that trying to solve the puzzle when you've very little to go on. It can be a bit of fun if you have the time to do it nearer the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think remember Eglantine de Soy. I think didn't Noel Feely announce his retirement in the immediate aftermath after winning
That's
that
right.
in a tearful interview. Feels like yesterday. For what it's worth, it's Dino Blue absolutely bolted up at Clonmel. Won by 15 lengths. She looks really exciting. I mean, it sounds like she's going to go straight there on the back of that one run. So light on experience, but again, you're spot on, Stephen. I've not had a wager in this race yet, but she just made it's all subjective, I suppose, at this stage of their career, isn't it? There's a lot of unexposed types, but she looked at a really, really exciting prospect. We'll shuffle on quickly to the Mares Chase. Concertista is generally your 9 to 4 favourite. We've got the 15 entries here. You've got Mount Ida, of course, previous Cheltenham Festival winner, over further, 11 to 4. Ellie May, last year's runner-up. Vivier de Tau's got the entry. Listed to Gordon Elliott, though. It sounds like she'll be having another crack at Blue Lord and Company in the Arkle. Put the kettle on. Last year's Champion Chase winner has an entry. I'd be interested if she lined up in that. You've then got Gin Online, the Glance of Queen, Zambella, and 16 to 1 bar. We'll stick with you, Vincent. Now, Concertista, she's a mare I can never seem to get right. She's clearly got a lot of class. However, she was beaten as an odds-on favourite at the Cheltenham Festival last year. Do you think she can make amends over the bigger obstacles?
She definitely has a chance. I wouldn't put her as favourite personally. I think Ellie May is the more likely favourite in my mind. Ellie, like this race, it was only run for the first time last year, as I mentioned earlier. And Colreevy beat Ellie May in the driving finish last year in this. It was a good performance. They were well clear of the rest. They were strung out like Washington behind now, in fairness. And there's no Colreevy this year. So I think Ellie May has done nothing particularly wrong this season. Got beaten by Mount Ida in Fairyhouse, but then went and won a race last week at very short odds in Nace, which it had won the previous year as well. I think Ellie May comes in with strong form. Like Concertista is still a novice. You've got that Riviere de Tell, as you say, probably doesn't run, but is also a novice. You've one of the English ones, the Glancing Queen, is a novice as well. I'd be looking for a more seasoned performer here. Ellie May has been there, done that to an extent in the race last year, and I'd be more keen to fall on that side of it. Put the Kettle On will possibly run here now, but I don't think Put the Kettle On will stay. It ran in the Mount Ida race with Ellie May in Fairyhouse and definitely looked like a non-stayer. It was its first time beyond 2.5. This is going to be a test here. 2 miles, 4.5 furlongs with an uphill finish. I wouldn't be fancying that if it turns up. We may end up with a relatively small field here. And for me, at the current odds, Ellie May definitely runs. I'd imagine there's nowhere else for her to go.
Yeah.
And just looking at that 7 to 2 looks a fair bet. I don't think she'll be 7 to 2 on the day.
Yeah, interesting stuff there. Yeah, Ellie May, as you say, last year's runner-up. Stephen, I mean, do you have a stronger view on this race from a kind of Antepost perspective compared to the Mares Novice?
Not wildly, but I agree with Vincent about not put the kettle on. I think she's looked gone, to be honest. She won that race at the Cheltenham Festival that fell apart, really. And I don't think she's been the same horse since. She's looked a real hard ride and fairly laboured and reluctant, and the trip would be a concern. I
Do you
think
think?
she
Just
just,
sorry, Steve.
yeah.
Do you think they'll just roll the dice in the champion chase and let her go out on a sword?
Yeah, I mean, I think she'd be 100 to 1 for that, wouldn't she? Although she hasn't gone with any fluency at
Yeah.
all this season. I mean, this would probably be she'd be 20 to 1 for this, I should think, but I wouldn't fancy her at all, to be honest. I think Vincent's right about Ellie May. I mean, she was a bit disappointing her first two starts. I think she was well beaten at Aintree at 5 to 2 on, but maybe she wasn't right that day. She looked back on Song, long odds on making All in Ireland the other weekend. Very fluent jumper, and Concertista, if she gets her jumping together, would be a big runner. I think the two English horses who are shortest in the betting are the Glancing Queen and Zambella, who are both lovely mares. They've been winning in small fields. Zambella's got a really good attitude and jumps really well, but you suspect the Irish form will be at least a stone better, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't heard you say that one before,
No.
Stephen, on this show. But I'm going to throw in another Irish horse here, Gin Online for Henry de Bromhead. There's a chance Rachel Blackmore could be on board this individual. Of course, you're probably most infamous for her race against My Drogo in the back end of last season when it was absolute carnage. Where they both, didn't they? They both fell simultaneously at the second last, and she went on to win. A lot of good form on good ground, a lot of chase experience as well. I wonder at a double figure price the race was going to cut up. I'd imagine she came over at the back end of last year to have a look at Cheltenham with this race in mind. So Gin Online at around 12 to 1 would be my poke. And we also talked about the Mares Hurdle. Tell me something, girls. My Cheltenham banker at the moment. So long live the Mares programme as far as my pocket is talking as things go. But no, thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. There's some interesting debate here. I'll talk to my producer Hans for the summer. We'll try to do a 4-hour show on this because there are lots of different strands here, aren't there? There's the breeding angle, there's the commercial angle, there's the punting angle, there's the enjoyment angle. There's a lot of angles here, and I think we'd all agree it's kind of striking the balance going forward for the next 5-10 years is going to be crucial in regards to lots of things, how the mares retain their importance within racing and the Cheltenham Festival as a whole, how that retains its gravitas. Is there a danger if it gets diluted too much? People do just start to see it as, inverted commas, not the Olympics, but just another meeting. And then I suppose then the flip side is ultimately, does that really matter if people turn up, bet on it and enjoy it? Again, lots to talk about on another day, but thank you for tuning in at home. Of course, my thanks to Stephen and to Vincent for their views on this show. Please join us again next week. Keep in touch on irishracing.com, on all the social media platforms. As I said, we'll do it again soon. Bye for now.